This is the weekly roundup hockey edition. My name is Sean Coles, and I'm here with my friend, and as always, Ryan Lake. Now we're going to start off with a Canadian teams roundup. So, Ryan, what team do you want to talk about right off the bat here?
Let's start with the Leafs.
All right. So the Leafs currently sitting at 6-6-3. Not the greatest week from what I can see here. They started off with a loss to LA. It's 7-0.
Ouch.
Friday played Philly, 6-3 win. Not too bad. Not too bad. And versus the Pens Saturday night, they kind of got taken out there. 4-1 loss. What do you think?
To be honest, they're playing good hockey. They're a little inexperienced on the back end. I feel like I feel like they're putting up good numbers. They're putting up a lot of shots, and Anderson didn't start the season off great, but he's definitely stepped up more. But I feel like just with more games for the young guys, more experience, I feel like those wins will start to come.
I don't know. I'm feeling like at this point they're going to need to start trading some of their forwards to start getting some more depth on the back end. It's just not cutting it when you've got a pairing of Gardner and Polak, neither one of them making good decisions in their own end when they're both defensemen, creates a little bit of a problem when you got so much youth up front.
But who would you recommend that they trade?
Oh, I would have said for Jacob Trouba. A couple of weeks back, he's signed. You could probably still get him, but that's a high price. So then you got to start looking at some prospects that might pay off down the line. From what I read, Sean Day seems to be doing pretty good these days, so you might be able to pry him out of the Rangers for maybe a second-round pick or something along those lines, but you never know. You never know. They're going to have to... Lou and the management team have got to start picking their brains a bit to figure out what they're going to do, because their back end can't last. They're not Pittsburgh.
Well, they are year 2 of the Shanna plan.
The Shanna plan, that's true.
But who, trading for those people, who would you recommend that, they look at trading from Toronto to acquire some of these?
They've got so much depth at forward. They've got Kasperi Kapanen. They could trade any of a host of young guys down there. They got Josh Levo as well, who's just sitting on the bench. For God's sake, they got to start getting Frankie Corrado in there or trade him.
Yeah, that's because they're hurting his ego at this point.
Absolutely. All right, so that's enough about the Leafs. Why don't we talk about Montreal?
Yeah, I mean, there's, everyone, likes to kind of talk about Montreal and, whether they're price or priceless. And, their record right now is 13-2-1. They played last night. They lost to Chicago.
Actually, sorry. Their record would now be 13-2-1.
Yeah,
my apologies. My apologies. For
and they had a pretty solid. There was a lot of questions after not Condon. Sorry, that was last year. A lot of questions after Montoya let in those 10 goals. How the team would respond.
Brutal night.
But needless to say, they won 4 straight until they lost to Chicago.
Not hard to win 4 straight when you got Carey Price in net.
It's true.
The rest of your team can be absolute crap, but if you've got the best goalie in the world, it's going to cut paper over a lot of cracks.
Now, surprisingly, as much as people say, Carey Price is the team, looking at some of the stats, up until last night, Montreal was number 2 in goals for in the league. So they're putting up numbers that they're not used to putting up with or without Price and net. So there's
despite Pacioretty not scoring.
Right. Well, they have been getting after last night. Weber has 7 goals now. He's already eclipsed.
That's the same amount of goals as Nazem Kadri.
PK Subban all of last year only had 6 goals. Now Weber has 7 goals, 1 more in only.
The difference there,
games.
though, is that Weber has been known to score more goals. Like last season, he scored 20 goals. Subban, his more, I guess, modus operandi, so to speak, would be that he's more of a playmaker. Yes, he's got the bomb from the point, but he tends to create plays for other people to score a little more than Shea Weber does. He's got that little bit extra edge of creativity, whereas Shea Weber's just a beast.
Right, and Shea Weber's bringing that new depth to their power play that they haven't had in the previous seasons, because I think only 1 goal was even strength. The rest have all been power play goals so far this year.
Absolutely. All right. So next up from the Canadian teams would be Ottawa. It's currently 9. Let's see, what are they? 9-5-1, losing last night in overtime to the Wild. What do you think of their season so far? What do you think of the team?
They're doing better than I thought they would, especially considering the whole,
Absolutely.
Anderson and his, the situation with his wife and
Helps them bond a little bit. You look at Tampa Bay a couple of years back, or not Tampa Bay, excuse me, New York Rangers. When Marty St. Louis got traded there, his mom was having health issues. I think she ended up passing away.
Right.
They rallied around him and ended up getting to the finals that year.
Right, yeah, it does definitely like a kind of like a morale.
Yeah, it lifts
in a
the
way,
team
it's
a bit,
yeah.
helps them bond a little bit. Absolutely.
Now, one thing I did read on NHL.com today though is apparently they're shopping Andrew Hammond.
Yes, I'm not totally surprised about that.
Because he only has, $1 million and a little bit in cap hit for this year and next.
Half decent goalie, pretty good as a backup. But
he's not so good. Hasn't had a good start yet this year, but he did have that torrid start.
Yeah.
Was it last year where he tore through 124 games? Like pretty much
year before.
It was the year before
going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think when it was the Hamburglers. Yeah.
There's going to be some teams that are probably going to need some help. You look at LA teams like that.
LA needs some help on the back end. Yeah, you never know. Well, and especially once Anderson comes back from being on indefinite leave, like he's going to come back eventually.
And Condon's been lights out for them so far.
Yeah, Condon's definitely nailed down that job, but again, once Anderson comes back, he's going to take over that number one role. Condon's going to be, it's probably going to end up being a 1A, 1B.
And at that point,
situation.
Hammond's going to be, he's injured. He was injured for the first little bit this year, and he's going to be the odd man out eventually.
Absolutely. All right, and now the darling of the NHL because of McSavior, excuse me, McDavid. We have got the Edmonton Oilers, who finished off the week with a loss against the New York Rangers. Their current record is 9-6-1. What do you think of their start so far to the year?
I remember probably about a month or two ago, I made a prediction to you, and I said that my bold prediction for the NHL this year is that the Oilers are probably going to finish in 4th or 5th in the Western Conference, and they started pretty good. They
had a hot start.
Yeah, the whole Cam Talbot kind of saving their goalie situation that they haven't had for a few years, and
back end is tightening up a bit as well, which was always their weakness.
Darnell Nurse is playing some good hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that kind of concerns me about the Oilers, they're coming down to earth a little bit, but they're still in first place in the Pacific. The problem with the Pacific is that there are a lot more teams that are significantly better than them. And personally, I think they will end up being a bubble team this year. They have to be. With all of the picks they've had in the last few years, they can't not be a bubble team.
Well, to be honest, they should be more than a bubble team, but
yeah, with some of the depth they've got up front. But again, remember, some of those guys are pretty young, still finding their feet a bit. Especially, they're not the deepest on the back end. Yeah, they've got Clefbaum, they've got Nurse, then they brought in Larson in that insane trade that they had to make because they had to get some defense there. But again, that's only your top three. I think their bottom three there is still a little bit weak. Cam Talbot's a half decent goalie. At least he shored that up a bit, but he's certainly not world class.
No, that's
by
true.
any stretch of the imagination. So we'll see what happens with him. Like it's gonna have to come to a head, especially when you've got the second best player in the game.
Asterisks with that, because some people will say that he's already better than Crosby, but that's a debate for later on.
We'll debate that in just a second. We'll have a little chat about that. But you know what? Especially their game versus the Pens this week, that was a big matchup for them. And they did catch the Pens short a little bit with their quick speed off the rush and got a couple of goals past, I think it was Matt Murray that was in net.
I think it was Murray that game.
That was Murray's first game back from injury, but what have you, the Pens still came out 4-3, scored a late goal. So Edmonton's still finding their feet.
Yeah, it will take them some time. They're pretty much, I'm not per se an Edmonton fan, but they're in uncharted waters, basically.
Well, and they're entertaining to watch again, finally.
Yeah.
And they're not entertaining to watch just for the chaos, and it's not like a bus crash anymore where you're kind of rubbernecking as you're going past, right? It's actually entertaining to watch, kind of like the Leafs a little bit this year. There's a little bit more entertainment value to it than normal.
Right, and being a Colorado fan, we used to be in the same division as the Oilers.
Yeah.
I used to hate playing them because the games would always finish 7-6, 5-4. It'd be always high scoring. It's fun to watch them when they're not in your division because you don't have that rivalry where you just don't like the team because they're in your division.
Exactly. But hey, even with the high scoring games, they're entertaining.
They're fun to watch, but it's usually
more
Edmonton always
fun
on
when
the
your
winning
team wins.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, absolutely. All right, and now speaking of bus crashes, we've got Vancouver, who ended out the week 6-9-1 with after a actually surprising win against the Stars 5-4, although maybe not so surprising because the Stars just, despite paying over $9 million a year for goalies between their two starters,
that's their problem.
Can't get good goaltending. But man, Vancouver's struggling this year.
Yeah, they need to do some, they need to have a hard look at the entire organization from owner all the way down.
It wasn't a great week for them. Actually, considering how much of a terrible run they went on with, I think 8 straight losses.
I think it was 9 at one point.
9 straight losses. My apologies. It came out 2-2 on the week. They lost in against the Islanders 4-2. They surprisingly won against the Rangers 5-3, lost to Detroit 3-1, and then won 5-4 against the Stars. So they seem to beat some pretty decent teams, but for some reason can't turn it on against some other teams that they maybe should be beating. Now, they're missing what's probably their top 2 defensemen, which doesn't help, but still, when you've traded one of your better blue chip prospects in McCann for a good Branson, you might have gone the wrong way there in terms of that deal.
Again, and it comes down to, what exactly are they thinking? What is their internal philosophy about building this team that they think that is, do they think that they're putting winners on the ice, or do they think that they're just, selling tickets at this point?
Well, it comes down to both at this point, really, because the ownership wants to keep getting their money. They're not the MLSE. They can't afford to just take the hit year after year, right? They have to win, or else the people just aren't coming to the games. And part of their problem is that they've said in the past that we're trying to retool on the fly. Well, you can't retool if you haven't drafted, and they haven't drafted. They're not Detroit. Detroit has drafted smartly for years, and that's how they've always had a fairly steady stream of good prospects. Lately, not quite so much. They don't have that Datsuk or Zetterberg up and coming, but hey, they still got Dylan Larkin, as the headliner of those.
Gustav Nyquist is fun to watch too.
Absolutely. So Vancouver again, we'll debate a little bit more later on.
That's something that you need to have, some serious look at, because there's something going on with that organization.
Absolutely. And then we go on to Winnipeg, who finished out the week 8-7-2 their record, and they finished it out with a win against LA. That's kind of surprising that they beat LA, aside from the fact that LA doesn't have a starting goalie right now.
Well, I mean, another topic, but their goalie they do have in Peter Budaj, he's been playing pretty phenomenal for them currently. But like you said, you can pretty much put anyone decent back there, and they'll get wins, right?
Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, no, Winnipeg is right now. It's all about the Line A show.
Oh man, that guy's just got a face that I want to punch. I don't know what it is about him, whether it's that cockiness, and hey, that cockiness is good for the game. We need a little bit more of that individuality for the Stars. Almost kind of like what the NBA is going if we want to grow viewership and stuff like that. But man, I just want to sock that guy in the face.
He does, it's just that, he doesn't really show too much emotion, it seems. It seems like he's kind of got that Terminator face. Yeah. Where, at the same time, you look at it, phenomenally skilled. He's fantastic with the puck. Some compare him to more of like an Ovechkin, where he's more of a pure goal scorer than he is a complete player like a Jonathan Toews or Sidney Crosby.
I would agree with that. I would say he's probably the next Ovechkin at this point. Just they set up at the same place,
right? And he's how old is he? 18 years old, and he's
18. He's lighting it up, and he's got 11
goals. He
season.
He got the shootout winner. Oh no, Scheifele got the shootout winner, but he scored his first ever shootout goal last night, and it was his first attempt. And it was he's pretty entertaining to watch too, and everyone's going on about the whole Matthews debate with him, and but again, it's the same thing.
You know what? Different players. Matthews isn't a pure goal scorer like that.
He's more of an all-around player.
Yeah, he's more comparable to Anze Kopitar.
Right.
And in my opinion, I'd rather have Anze Kopitar than Alex Ovechkin. Why? Because Anze Kopitar's got 2 rings, Ovechkin's got none.
Right, and that's where I kind of come with the comparison of, same draft year, whatever, Crosby, Ovechkin. One's technically they should have been the same year with the lockout, whatever. However, you look at these guys, they're 2 separate players. You can say one's the best in the world, the other one's the best in the world. Crosby plays the full ice. Crosby back check. Crosby's penalty killing. He's doing it all.
Got 2 rings.
Ovechkin is there on the power play, and he's there at full strength. And he's a phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong. I love Ovechkin, but you can't compare the two. They're different players, different positions. Same with Matthews, center, whereas Line is a winger. Yeah, so
gets a little more power play time, I think, as well. Now Matthews gets the most ice time of anyone.
And Matthews also leads the league right now in shots for rookies.
Yeah.
However, he's just not getting the full, he's not reaping the benefits yet, which will come.
He's a little more nuanced, let's say, than Line A, who is essentially just a battering ram.
Right.
For putting the puck in the net. Wicked shot.
He does have a wicked shot.
But you know what? Who has impressed me the most this season, and who for a while I was like, I don't know that this guy's going to make it or be the star player that the Jets thought they had when they drafted him, was Mark Scheifele.
He's showing up as the player that everyone expected him to be when they drafted him.
He's going to be their top line center for years, probably the next 10 years.
I remember,
and probably future captain as well.
Oh, for sure. I remember when they first drafted him, they had such high expectations that first year.
Yeah.
And then
it's taken longer to develop.
Right. And I remember they sent him back down. And I remember watching a Sportsnet interview where he was just devastated that he got sent back down. But he waited, he paid his dues, and now it's he's reaping the benefits.
Kind of like Max Domi. He probably could have been kept up that first year. Arizona's not deep.
They're not.
But they sent him back for an extra year in London, and it paid dividends for him.
I paid dividends for London, too.
Yeah. All right, so our next team here that we've got up, and what appear to be our last Canadian team, is Calgary, who finished off the week with a record of 5-10-1. I would say it's probably fair to say that their biggest problem, aside from not scoring enough, is goaltending.
Yeah, and that surprised me because I thought that Brian Elliott was the better goalie between Jake Allen and Brian Elliott in St. Louis.
Probably is, to be honest.
He played well. When Allen got hurt, Elliott would step in. When Elliott stepped in, they had kind of like a Dallas Stars, kind of 2 number 1 goalies there.
What they thought was 2 number 1 goalies.
And I honestly thought that Calgary was one of those teams that was going to be a young up and coming team. They have guys like Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan.
Sam Bennett.
Yeah, Sam Bennett. They have these fantastic players, and they got some experience in the playoffs a few years ago. There, they ended up losing, but
But you know what? They rode hot goaltending and scoring late in the game, like third period goals is basically third period goals and hot goaltending is how they got to the playoffs that year, and that is reminding me right now of Winnipeg.
Yes.
Winnipeg's doing the exact same thing, I'll bet without the hot goaltending quite so much, but they are getting those third period goals, and that just doesn't last.
It doesn't. Especially when you get later in the season when you get back-to-back games and teams are more tired.
Yeah, well, and they tighten up a little more as well. Gets a little more.
Goals are harder to come by later in the season, and that's when the goalies usually tend to step it up. And they went with Connor Hellebuck. They
sent Pavelec down to the minors.
Yeah, so they're looking to apparently they're looking to shop him, but they haven't had anyone inquiring about him.
Going to take him.
So they definitely went with youth with their goalie there. And their record's not too bad as of right now. They're winning, but Calgary they have
They have a comparable record to the Leafs right now, which for them is not good because they're supposed to be years ahead. But getting back to Calgary, what has surprised me most was the news this week that they were shopping Dougie Hamilton, or listening to offers. Maybe not shopping, but they are listening to offers on Dougie Hamilton.
And I wonder why. I feel like they're kind of looking at the organization, and I feel like they're jumping the gun a little bit early. I feel like
absolutely, he's still a young defenseman. He's what, 23,
right? And he's a great, he's a great defenseman. He's great at moving the puck. He's got a lot of little things that he does right that maybe necessarily don't show up on the stat sheet, but he does the little dirty things in the corners that you need to do to win games. And I feel like I don't know.
He hasn't lived up to expectations there.
Which again, I feel like him getting the contract, and I maybe not so much him as a player, but maybe the whole system, because that whole system's not working currently. With Elliott's not being the goalie he could have been. Guys
but you know what? I would say one thing for Elliott is that he might be getting used to a different style of defense that they play, which is not much.
And it's a new goalie coach too, right?
Yeah. Oh, is it a new goalie coach?
Well, compared to who we had in St. Louis, right?
Enough.
So,
fair enough. Yeah.
At the same time, it's maybe there's, who knows, maybe there's a difference because Calgary is pretty high elevation. Maybe there's something there that's bothering him.
Entirely possible, but you know what? They might also be asking him to change parts of how he plays.
They
right?
could.
Leafs did seem to do something similar with Freddie Anderson, wanting him to be a lot more aggressive than he's really used to being. They might be doing something like that with Elliott, which could be affecting his play, or the fact that he just got used to playing behind a pretty sound defensive team, and now he doesn't.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But then it also, you look at the team as a whole again, and it's not just Elliott. You look at guys like Johnny Gaudreau, who signed a big contract, and he's underperforming. All these guys that are expected to perform.
He could be feeling the pressure of that big contract, right?
I feel like the upcoming to the season with him not having the contract, going through the whole, the World Cup of Hockey.
Sat out a little bit too for training camp.
I feel like that hurt him a little bit
probably.
Because he wasn't there right in the mind, I think.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. All right, well, we are going to get off our weekly roundup here for the Canadian teams. Now, first main topic for the week. McDavid versus Crosby.
It was a good game. It was a
great game.
I enjoyed watching it. I mean, McDavid pretty much opened up he did some pretty, his speed's undeniable. He blew
what he does at a high speed as well. He blows past guys on the boards.
And not only that, but he protects the puck, kind of like Crosby-ish, how he protects the puck, and he gets the passes over to teammates that a second ago the pass wasn't there, and he somehow made that pass available. And they scored 2 quick goals off of feeds from McDavid. And for the first little bit, it looked like McDavid was gonna kind of blow the whole Crosby McDavid thing out of the water. It looked like it was one-sided for the first little bit of that game.
It was a one-sided game. But you know what? One thing I saw while watching that was that the Pens were controlling it. They were hitting them on the counterattack, and I thought getting a little bit lucky. And again, reminded me of the Leafs from a couple of years ago. They scored tons of goals off the rush, but they weren't very defensively sound. They were riding hot goaltending, maybe a little bit there with Edmonton as well, but Pittsburgh still came back and bit them.
Well, there's a reason why Pittsburgh is the defending Stanley Cup champions, right? There's not much difference from the team that they had last spring to the team they have now.
The only difference is that they're missing Ben Lovejoy. That's the only player that they are missing between last year.
And yeah, Zakhoff, but he...
Well, Zakhoff, but he was essentially out of it by the time that
the Murray and Fleury and Murray.
Yeah, Fleury and Murray. Well, and you got to wonder with them what's going to happen. They're going to have to get rid of one goalie, but they'll probably just let Fleury possibly go in the expansion draft.
Yeah, that's a topic for another another day.
Absolutely, me getting off topic there, but you know what? Some people, I'm not saying everyone, but some people are saying McDavid's not like the best player in the league. How can he not be? He's so fast. He's skilled. He pulls off things that no one else can do. You know what? You know who he saw do all that stuff? Sidney Crosby. Who did he grow up watching? Because there is a 10-year gap there. He grew up watching Sidney Crosby.
And
Sidney Crosby's still in his prime, too. He's still doing stuff that no other player
Sidney
can
Crosby
do.
This season, after coming off of his concussion, is probably playing the best hockey that he's ever played, including the World Cup.
He has scored more goals than he has games. Than games he's played in.
He's on fire.
Absolutely.
The way he can move with the puck, the way he can protect the puck. 2 guys can be on him, and he can still somehow find a way to get out of that situation.
He's got that lower body strength that you can't muscle him off the puck.
I feel like there's a chance that at the end of the day, at the end of the conversation, this is going to be kind of like the Lemieux Gretzky conversation, where some people are going to say one's better than the other. Other people are going to say, no, this one's better than the other. But at the end of the day, I think it's just going to be
Two amazing players.
Two amazing players. Now, don't get me wrong.
Crosby's, two different generations almost at this point as well.
Exactly. Right? And Crosby has the rings.
He does. 2 rings now. Took him a while to get that second one, but he's still been a star performer.
He's been pretty much the top of his team every single year.
Absolutely.
McDavid still hasn't played a full season yet. He got hurt last year, so you don't know how.
And yet he's captain already.
A lot of teams tend to do that with their future stars, though, right? Like it's
that is true. They did the same with Landeskog
in Colorado. They did, yeah. They did it with Crosby. They did it with Ovechkin. Those guys, they were going to be the captain one day. It came available. They were,
Hey, at least they gave it to a player who is still going to be there with the team at the end of the season. Not like Andrew Ference, who was down, getting scratched every night, but still the captain.
I feel like they gave him the captaincy just because of how long he's been with Edmonton. At that point, that was like...
no, because they signed him as a free agent.
Was it a free agent?
He was. He was a free agent. They signed him, made him captain because apparently they signed him for his leadership skills. And then he was so terrible he couldn't end up getting into the lineup after a while.
Right, actually,
felt a little bad for him with that one. Not gonna lie.
That's like L.A. with they had who was it? Was it Dustin Brown who was?
Oh yeah, they stripped him and gave it to Kopitar. But you know what? Now Brown's playing better.
Yeah, but I mean,
Brown's still not worth his $5 million a year.
But he's been there forever.
He has. He has been there a long time. But you know what? Get back to McDavid versus Crosby. McDavid. Excellent player, still very untested. You look at the way that Kadri dominated him the other week. First off, Kadri shouldn't have been allowed to trade him like that. I do kind of agree with Don Cherry on that one. Lucic maybe needed to step in a little bit.
Which was one of the reasons why they got Lucic.
And yet Lucic isn't even playing with them anymore. It's been Pat Maroon.
Yeah.
Pat Maroon.
Who he is another, big-bodied.
He's a big-bodied guy, but I'm wondering how well he can keep up. Well, not many people can keep up with McDavid.
Lucic can't keep up with McDavid.
Well, but hey, that's the problem with Lucic, though. You signed him for 7 years. He already can't keep up. What's going to happen at the end of that 7 years when he's mid-30s and is even slower?
Yeah, but, off topic of the Crosby-McDavid, Lucic is one of those prototypical power forwards,
That
right?
is true.
He gets into the areas that you need to open up more space for guys like McDavid or, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins or Jordan Eberle or any of these guys who are decent with the puck. You get guys like Lucic to kind of knock the other guys around to open up space, right? Yeah. Power forwards are meant to create space with physical play, right? So,
but regardless, McDavid, few years might be best in the league. Until then, Crosby clearly has something to say about that because he's been absolutely on fire this year. And I don't see that calming down anytime soon. Because, you know what? He was good in the second half of last year. But he still put up half-decent numbers. And great in the playoffs as well. You look what he could have done if he'd been playing that well for the first half of the season. Everyone's writing him off. Oh, Crosby's done. He can't play anymore. He's still got hockey left in him.
It wasn't Crosby. It was more of the coaching system that was in place.
That's exactly what it was. But everyone wrote him off, and he's still proving them wrong. And he's proving the people wrong that say that McDavid is the top player in the league. He's saying, wait. I got a couple of years left here. I'm still the best player on the planet, and let me tell you why. I should say best forward on the planet. Carey Price is still the best player.
Yeah, that's undeniable. There's no one. If anyone even tries to argue that point, Carey Price. No, there's hands down.
Can't.
Now, kind of, it's different situation, but when you compare Crosby to McDavid, it makes me think of, when Jeremy Roenick got tripped on that breakaway, and Patrick Waugh's response in the press conference is, I can't hear what he's saying. I got my 2 Stanley Cup rings plugged in my ears. So that kind of, until McDavid can kind of bring his team maybe not even to the promised land. Like you can look at guys like Ovechkin who haven't won but are considered some of the greatest of all time, sure. But as long as he can put up the solid numbers and at least put his team into contention, then you can start looking at the conversation. But until then,
the problem with that though is that Ovechkin was seen as a great player, but not a generational one. And quite in the same terms as Crosby. Crosby was alone in the sense that he is the best player. And there was a reason for that. A lot of people didn't like him. He's toughened up a lot past few years, certainly earned a lot more of my respect than he had when I was, well, of course I was 16, 17. I was stupid. What the hell did I know when I was that old, right? But McDavid isn't on the Ovechkin level. He's on the Crosby level, right? In the sense that he is seen to be that generational player that is supposed to elevate his team, take his team on his back, and get them to the Stanley Cup. At least one. If he doesn't have at least one Stanley Cup, and honestly, he's probably expected to have two. If he doesn't have that by the end of his career, he's going to be seen as a bust.
And the reason why he's more on the Crosby level too is because he is that full player. Yeah. Whereas you look at Ovechkin's more of a one-dimensional offensive player who doesn't tend to backcheck or play as much defensively.
But he can get away with not winning a cup.
He can, but at the same time, if you're going to have him in, breaking all these goal records, sure. He's not going to touch Gretzky's goal record.
Well, no one in this day and age is going to touch Gretzky's goal record.
And at the end of the day, to me, if he doesn't have the championships, I'm going to keep it between Crosby and McDavid because I do think by the end of his career. Now, who's to say that's with Edmonton? I don't know. But by the end of his career...
That's right. He's going to Toronto. McDavid's going to Toronto 3 years.
So is Jonathan... So is John Tavares, too,
no,
right?
Not John Tavares. It's going to be Tyler Seguin.
Oh, is it going to be Tyler Seguin?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be Tyler Seguin going to the Leafs.
Okay.
No, but you see what I mean, though, right? McDavid, he's going to have to win at least 1 to 2 cups to be considered as great a player as Crosby.
I think he will. By the end of his career, he will have at least 1, maybe 2. Like I said, I don't know if that's going to be with Edmonton or not, but...
You know what? I'll say this to end off this topic. Crosby will always be considered the greater player, and I will tell you why. Because of the Olympics. Because of scoring that golden goal in 2010, he will always be that just little bit extra better.
I will 100% agree with you, but you don't know what's going to happen in the upcoming Olympics, right?
Well, if they even go to this Olympics and then future Olympics down the road. But anyways, getting off McDavid versus Crosby, we're going to talk about Philly a little bit. Talk about their back end, their goaltending. Looks like Neuwirth's out 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, I saw he left the game the other day with, was it a knee injury or?
Yes, it was a knee injury.
And as Montreal fans can relate, when a goalie has a knee injury, it tends to not go so well for your team. And
yeah.
Now Philly's kind of had the what goalie do we roll with here every year? It seems.
Yeah, they still got Steve Mason.
And
at least they got away from the what was his name? The
Brizgalov?
Yeah, at least they got away from the Brizgalov craziness.
That was going to be my next point. Is ever since Brizgalov has left the team, they've kind of been in limbo with what goalie do we roll with.
They were in limbo when Brizgalov was there.
Hey, I'm a huge supporter of Brizgalov. Okay,
because he's entertaining.
He's very entertaining.
He was a good goalie when he was in Arizona.
Yes, he was,
and I think that was very much down to the system that they played. But yes, they've always been in limbo. Philly's always very hard on their goaltending. They got Steve Mason back there. He's a half decent goalie. I wouldn't say that he's on that Reimer level. I love Optimus Reimer. He's a good goalie. He's not a great goalie, and that's why I think it is good they brought in Anderson, got Bernier out of there. I could see why they tried that experiment.
Well, Bernier was kind of dumpster fire at the end there.
Oh, totally. Totally. That was heartbreaking for me, let me tell you, having to watch any game with him playing. But Philly's had this carousel, and I don't know if it's just because they haven't drafted the goalies that they need to, or they're not getting those prospects through that they need for goalies.
I'm really surprised that they made the playoffs last year. They, watching them play,
they rode Gostisbehere, man.
Every time that I watched a game, they would lose.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't watch games often because I'm not a Philly fan. But if my team Colorado wasn't playing, I would watch games that were on. And Wednesday night a lot of times is rivalry night. You'd see Philly and Pittsburgh sometimes, and watch Crosby score all those goals in Philly. And Philly to me, like especially this year, Gostisbehere isn't playing the same level as he did last year.
Well, a little sophomore slump there, and that's fair.
It happens. It happens to most players. Like look at McKinnon.
Yeah.
McKinnon had the sophomore slump. It happens to a lot of these highly skilled players.
And he's a defenseman as well. It's going to take him a little longer. Now, what I couldn't believe was Friday night, Komarov out-skating Gostisbehere.
I don't know if he was tired at that point, if he was at the end of a long shift, or what happened. But
it was during a power play. He might have been a little more tired, especially if he
got
hadn't gotten
blown
rested.
by.
Oh, yeah. And Komarov, he's quick, but he's not Gostisbehere quick.
No, Gostisbehere is a fairly, especially for a defenseman, he's very quick.
Yeah.
Now,
great skater.
Keeping on the whole Philly topic, Claude Giroux is nowhere to be found this year.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wayne Simmons isn't having too bad a year, but man, Claude Giroux is the one that makes them tick, and if he's not going, then that team is just going to be spinning its wheels.
Now, I don't know if it's because he got kind of shunned at the World Cup of Hockey, where he kind of barely played, but
Claude Giroux is a great player, but when you've got as much to choose from as Team Canada, you really got to set yourself apart. And he's not that Ryan O'Reilly type where Babcock would just shove him into any situation. He was reliable. Claude Giroux, I don't know, is that reliable in his own end for Babcock to really love.
You bringing up the whole Ryan O'Reilly touches a soft spot at being a Colorado fan.
They let Paul Stastny go. They let Ryan O'Reilly go.
To be fair, I didn't want Colorado to pay what Stastny wanted.
Yeah, that was fair because I don't think he's really ever lived up to that in St. Louis. But Ryan O'Reilly, they needed to hang on to. They cheaped out, and now.
Yeah, although I am happy that we did get Nikita Zadorov on the back end.
That was a good defensive pickup. And going into the defense a little more with Philly, they've got Ivan Provorov.
Yes, they
back
do.
there. That's probably their, aside from Gostisbehere, who kind of came out of nowhere. At least for the rest of the hockey world, came out of nowhere. Philly probably knew what they had. Provorov is their top defensive prospect.
Yes, well, I would 100% agree with that.
But aside from that, they don't really have a whole else on their back end there.
Yeah, the Philly's kind of one of those teams where, this year's, they might be a bubble team, or they could, come trade deadline, unload, and kind of figure out what to do or where to go. You know what I mean? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for sure because they're.
You know what? They got Travis Konechny coming up. He's been playing great so far this year at 19. He's going to. You know what? He will probably overtake Braden Shen in terms of importance to that team.
Yeah, Braden Shen's he is pretty important to that team, but yeah, when he comes up finally, he's going to be he's going to be there to stay, and I feel like he's going to produce well for Philly.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. All right, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the Jack Johnson creditor deal. Now, this was a strange story that kind of came out a couple of years ago when it turned out that Jack Johnson, who makes a good amount of money, is actually flat broke.
I'm not really too good with finances and how it whole works. But apparently, what I was reading is his parents are his power of attorney.
Yep.
What happened was they took out a bunch of high interest loans, and then they kind of got screwed on that. And when they went to pay him back, they kind of took more loans out. So by the time they went to go owe all the money, they owed almost double in interest and whatnot.
Now, the one thing I saw from this deal is that he's going to end up having to live on what will end up being approximately $230,000 a year. And I know the rest of us go, oh me, oh my, this is only $230,000. Like, families live on less than that, on like a quarter of that. And I say to those people that don't have any sympathy for him, is that he has got a very limited amount of time to make money to set him up for basically the rest of his life, and he's essentially lost that.
Yeah, and not to mention, it's not really his fault.
No, and it's not his fault as well. And that leads into the whole topic of athletes handling their money. You don't always have someone trustworthy like Dwayne Johnson in Ballers to take care of your money.
He
right?
is a great financial advisor.
I wish I could have The Rock handling my money. Sadly, that's just not going to happen. But you got all these young guys making millions of dollars, and some of them don't know where to put it.
And my question to you is, I would love to be a fly on that wall, because what do you think the conversations he has with his parents are right now?
Do you think he even talks to them? I would guess probably not, but we don't have a whole lot of information on it because it's being kept kind of quiet and private. And you understand why. Like, that's a pretty nasty situation to have to put up with.
I just hope that his next contract, he isn't playing the greatest, but he's a decent defenseman, and I I hope that his next contract, I believe next year he also has to keep only like $230,000.
Yeah, he's got the remainder of this current contract.
I hope the next contract, they sign him to a decent amount, whatever team he goes to, just to kind of help him out because he's not going to have much after that.
Yeah, that's a pretty nasty situation. That's for sure. And you know what? The greatest example of that sort of thing absolutely has to be Bobby Orr.
Yeah, that Bobby Orr kind of he really got screwed over. He lost, not only were his knees shot and whatnot, but he lost a lot of money.
Well, and they offered him part ownership of the Bruins, and Alan Eagleson didn't tell him that, and he turned it down and went to Chicago, where he played like maybe 20 games because that's when his knees were done. He could have been far. Now, he's doing okay now, because he's going to have all sorts of McDavid money flowing through over the years. I'm not crying for him now.
Not to mention all the commercials he's done over the years.
Yeah, exactly. But that put him in a pretty tight spot, especially when he didn't have a long career. But anyways, that leads into a whole other topic, maybe for another day. But next up here, we got to talk about some Vancouver ridiculousness. What in the hell is going on in that city?
Like I said earlier, I don't know what is going on. I heard that recently that there's teams inquiring. Now, again, this isn't 100% accurate. I was reading sources on TSN and whatnot, but apparently they're looking at shopping, Oli Joe Julevi or Yolevi or however you pronounce his name. And he's a great, local boy for, not local boy, but we watch him play at the London Knights. And
fantastic defenseman, best one they've got.
Was he the first defenseman pretty much taken off the board, and he's a great defenseman, and apparently teams are looking at inquiring about him, and apparently Vancouver might bite on it. So I don't know
if the offer is good enough, but if they do that, they are stupid.
From what I hear, is they're looking for a top 6 forward.
And man, they cannot give up their best defensive prospect. They just can't. And if they do that, Jim Benning needs to go.
I think they're in like a win now mentality,
but they can't win now.
And that's why I said earlier,
deluded.
They need to take a look at the organization from the top brass down, from Jim Benning to coaches to the owners to everyone, to see what the hell is going on here.
You know what? They are in the spot that the Leafs were in probably about 3 years ago.
Before the Shanaplan.
They need their own Shanaplan. That's what they need. Now they can't have Shanahan. We're not letting it. Leafs aren't letting him go. He's not going anywhere.
You know it's bad in Vancouver when I saw on some posts that Vancouver fans were saying that Craig McTavish could probably do a better job.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm sure some Edmonton fans would have something to say about that, because they've been worse than Vancouver for the last few years. That's for sure. But you know what? Vancouver is now paying for. They still think they're in a win now mentality. Their win now mentality was 5 years ago.
Their win now mentality was the year that they went to the Stanley Cup final.
And you know what? They tried it again for the next year and still traded away more draft picks, more prospects to get these players that were terrible.
Yeah, and they relied too much on the Sedins, I feel. I feel that
that's about all they've got, and they underutilized Bo Horvat.
Bo Horvat, again, local London Knights player here.
He's probably one of the best forwards they've got, probably their 3rd or 4th best forward, and they don't use him. No. And then they've got Jake Virtanen, who they recalled after 2 games.
They send him down, and then 2 games later they call him back up. So, again, kind of like the whole, Frankie Corrado thing, where it's just going to hurt your ego at that point.
Well, it not only hurt the ego, which, that's got to be kind of frustrating when you're going up and down all the time like that, but it hurts your development.
Yeah.
Virtanen probably would have been better off playing in junior last year and then with the AHL this year.
Especially when you have, you're developing and you go from one set of coaches to another set of coaches who, might tell you different things. Now, usually they try and kind of keep it very similar, but at the same time, they're competitive teams that are trying to win games. So I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot going on with Vancouver that is more than you and I could discuss. We could sit here probably for 2 hours and go on about how dumpster fire they've been lately.
Like I said earlier, they are like a bus crash that you go by, you see people on fire running out and you're just looking at them because you almost don't know what to say, but it's also you can't look away.
Mm-hmm.
They're in that spot. And you know what? If they had drafted better, they didn't trade away draft picks, kept their prospects, developed them, they might be doing a little bit better. But they're not, and they're paying for it. Jim Benning has traded away. You think he would be more into scouting and drafting and developing because he has a scouting background? He's traded away more picks than the idiot before him ever did. And that guy was dumb. But as you said, we could debate that for hours upon hours.
Especially if there's, some Vancouver fans listening. We don't want to offend them too much, or bruise them.
Hey, you know what? Vancouver fans, I feel for them.
Well, you're
I'm a
Leafs
Leafs fan, man.
Yeah.
I get it. But Vancouver fans don't let things go. Well,
No.
some of them don't. They hold on to it a little bit too long. So we will see what happens with Vancouver down the road. I'm guessing they kind of tank this year, trade away their first-round pick for a top 6 forward, and end up getting the first overall pick. Crazy as it may sound, it's probably not out of the realm of possibility with Jim Benning.
Not with Vancouver, no.
But as you said, we could debate that for hours, and we don't really have hours right now. But next topic that we're going to talk about, Hockey Hall of Fame class. They were inducted today.
Was it today?
It was today. And you know what? There were some good guys in there. We had Eric Lindros was the big number again, local boy.
Well, from London, yeah.
Always good. And you know what? Great to see him get his due because he was an absolute monster.
Career cut short, but
Absolutely.
he was, when he was there, he was phenomenal.
There's no other way around that. There was not one more dominant player.
Especially for how big he was, because he's like a typical, he's like
He could
today's
have played
power
today.
forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was fast, he was big, he was strong, he could shoot, he could do basically everything that you needed.
I feel like his career would be a lot longer if someone named Scott Stevens wasn't in the NHL.
That probably would have helped, but Scott Stevens, one of the best defensemen that there was for his generation. A little dirty.
For most generations.
Little dirty.
Little
Can't
dirty.
deny that.
However, as I was saying to you last week, looking at some of his penalty minutes, he in his whole career, he only had one elbowing penalty.
That I find hard to believe. I don't think he'd be able to get that away with that few in this day and age.
But that's because nobody can hit really anymore in today's hockey.
Well, they can hit. You just got to be super careful about it. And you know what? I think it's harder for the players that are in the league now when it comes to that because they've had to adapt to the rules. Younger players coming through, they're going to be a little more used to the current rules. I think the hitting might be a little bit better at that point, although who knows.
The game's developed more into like an Eastern Conference style where it's more skill and speed and less physical play.
Hey, you know what? I'm all right with
it's fun
that.
to watch.
Because, you know what? At that point, you start getting, like the other Hockey Hall of Fame inductees. You get Sergei Makarov.
Yep.
Came through. He's a great defenseman.
Played for Calgary?
I believe so, yeah. I think Cliff Fletcher brought him over way back when. Rogie Vachon as well. Good goalie. Honestly, before my time, I can't really speak to him. A name I was familiar with, I would assume he was a good goalie.
From looking at his stats, he won 3 Stanley Cups in his first 6 seasons in the NHL.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is impressive.
1966 is when he came into the league.
Oof. Well, good on him. But you know what? The biggest name this year, at least for me, being a Leafs fan, Pat Quinn.
He was also not just for the Leafs, regardless of, guaranteed some people aren't going to like him because, Montreal fans, they just, you can't deny how good of a coach he is. Even for the game itself, for Hockey Canada.
Well, and not only that, going back further, Philadelphia, when he was because that was his first head coaching job, was with the Phillies, and he changed how they played, and it almost pushed them into the more modern age. He was a very modern coach at the time as well, because he actually taught the players as opposed to just shouting out instructions, and he did a lot more one-on-one work with them as well.
So he's not a Patrick Waugh, is what you're saying?
No, not a Patrick Waugh. No, you know what? He's absolutely revered as one of the most gentlemanly coaches ever in the National Hockey League, and it was an absolute shame that after the Leafs that he flamed out,
and then he passed away.
Well, he did some stuff with juniors as well. And he led the under-18 Canada team and obviously won World Juniors at 09 and then didn't even tell anyone that he was sick.
No, it was one of those things
came out of nowhere.
I remember reading the headline that he passed away. Kind of, I'm not a Leafs fan per se. I don't not like the Leafs, but I'm not a Leafs fan. But it was sad to hear when Pat Quinn, the hockey world lost a legend, right?
Absolutely. And we're gonna close out our show today by just talking a little bit about Brian Bickle. News last week that he's been diagnosed with MS. Absolutely heartbreaking for him and his family.
Yeah, it's
great guy and young too. Terrible to happen.
Yeah, I'm not overly familiar, with the condition, but apparently it's especially for a professional hockey player, it's got to be pretty hard. It ended. Apparently, he just didn't feel well after the playoffs or something like that last year, and it kind of just got diagnosed now with with multiple sclerosis, and it's sad to hear. And my prayers out to him and his family, and hope that he might not be able to play again, but hopefully
hopefully he stays in the game.
Yeah,
whether in the game, get him a job somewhere as a scout, whatever. Yeah. Just keep his toe in the water, so to speak, and hopefully he has a successful career after.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where you can't really plan for it to happen, and when you do, you just got to be best prepared for the next stage in life.
Absolutely. And on that note, we are going to wrap up the weekly roundup hockey edition, and we will talk to you next week.